Hey, this is Anthony with RevZilla TV, and welcome to our detailed breakdown of the Arai VX Pro 3 full-face dirt helmet. Now, most people don't know this, but Arai actually invented the full-face dirt helmet with the VX Pro, the original, which was many, many moons ago. This helmet, actually, the VX Pro 3, is the third generation of that full-face model. The two-piece model, which was not a full-face dirt helmet, was actually called the MXC Pro, which kind of around the 2000s became, out of fashion. So Arai came out with this full-face model. They've iterated a few times. The current VX Pro 3 is a few years old, but they've kind of kept up with the times. The newest version is Snell 2010. Let's start with the basics here. Basically, it's a dirt helmet. It's a little bit of a different configuration. It's meant to be worn with goggles. There's obviously no shield on this guy. You have a peak up top. It's a sun visor. It offers a few different functions. But really what you're looking at is a shell that's meant to be as round as it possibly can, because the rounder the shell, the less chance of it digging into the dirt in a crash. It's even less chance that it'll slide. If you crash in a street helmet on the street, you're going to skip, you're going to slide. On the dirt, anything that's pointy that doesn't break away is going to dig in and potentially twist your head and create a problem from a protection standpoint and potentially make you more injury prone. So we look at the Arai helmet. It's very round, even across the chin bar. You also have pieces that are going to shear away. If you look at the top here, these different configurations across the vent, these different pieces, these scoops, they break away. The peak is connected with plastic bolts on the side, plastic bolt up top. They're meant to shear away. There are a lot of competitors that make a peak. Let's talk about the peak for a second. The peak has a couple unique elements to it. There are a lot of competitors where the peak, they'll even give you a second peak because they know that their bolts aren't breakaway enough and the peak needs to break then to make sure it doesn't dig into the dirt. On this helmet, the peak is actually very, very strong. And what's going to happen is the peak will actually shear the bolts and break away, and you'll just need to get a $2 set of new plastic bolts and reconnect it. The peak is actually a very expensive piece. If we really think about this helmet, the VX Pro 3 is the most high-end, technical, pro-level dirt helmet built by Arai. It's the Arai standard. It uses, you talk about the exterior shell here, it's the Super CLC laminate, which is their complex laminate construction. It's basically the same shell material, same level of protection as something like the Arai RXQ. Now, is it going to be more protective than an Arai Vector 2? It's not going to be more protective. Arai builds to a safety standard. But what it's going to do is going to be slightly lighter weight, because as you go up in price from Arai, you get different, more exotic materials that allow for similar strength while keeping the weight down. It's going to be a little bit more heavy than something like a Corsair 5, but again, that Corsair 5 is going to use more carbon fiber. But again, you're talking about the same level of protection. So if we talk about this, the fit's going to be an intermediate oval, so it's going to be in that sweet spot for Arai, and it's going to use a multi-density EPS. And what they do is they tune that EPS so they're able to keep the profile of the helmet as small as they possibly can. They want it to be as round as they can and as close to your face as it can. So what they do is they use multiple densities of EPS liner within the helmet to distribute the energy evenly. So let's go back to the round thing that I've talked about. If you notice this guy, if you look down here, notice how round this chin bar is. That's done for a few reasons. The first reason is, again, to keep it closer to your face. The second reason is that when it's more round and you have more of a curve here on the chin bar that goes out, what's going to happen is if this was pointier, if this came straight out, you see some other brands that come out and come to a definitive peak. By this being more round means that when it breaks, it's always going to break out. If you made it more straight and you loaded it from the front in a crash situation, you're going to give that helmet, you're going to introduce an element of chance that when these pieces break in an extreme crash, they may break in or may break out. Now, this is a laminate, this is fiberglass. If this breaks, this is going to be sharp. So what you don't want to do is your Arai is giving you the ability to eliminate a lot of the chance of this breaking in and coming in contact with your face. So again, it's round on purpose from a safety standpoint. If we also look at the side, when this was originally developed in Japan, the guard that would go across your nose, people said, oh, it's too close, when they were wearing, the first generation VX Pro here in America. So what they've done, and they've refined this over time, they've actually bowed this out slightly so you have a little bit more nose clearance, and then you have a removable breath guard in here as well. They use expanded steel here for this mesh Roost guard, and it's built in. It's a nice touch, and behind it there's a multi-position slider that you can either open or close to protect yourself further from dust or roost, and you can do that behind here as well. If we move up to the helmet itself, right, so you're going to see this peak. Underneath the peak, this is the only Arai helmet that uses this style of vent. It's going to be a two-position vent, vent, and they're actually sat, the holes are 10 millimeter, and they're sat really up high, almost over this devil horn. The reason that this shape, it accommodates the high vent, but it also creates more of an air scoop. But what you have here is, the reason why the shape or the vent is not down here closer to the brow is because if they put it near the brow, they'd have to reinforce the thickness of the shell so that the brow would be equally durable even with those vents in a face plant or a crash that's going to hit directly on your brow. So what they did was they engineered the peak here to have these scoops. They moved the vents really far back. They built the vent close. That's going to be easy enough. It's a different style of closure, that's easy to use with the glove, but by setting it back, they can create a uniform thickness while still offering the same amount of protection here in the brow. And notice here, here's your spinner. That's going to loosen and tighten the adjustable peak there. It's really easy, and again, it's a plastic bolt. It's meant to shear away. If I turn this guy completely around backwards, you're going to see our exit vent configuration. So you have two intakes, and really you only have a few intakes because you're going to have that open face and so much air is going to be coming through. But with that much air coming through, to have your passive vents, your Venturi vents here on the back, we have 7. We have 2 winglets that are 10 millimeter holes down, so air will come in around the back of your ear, vent out from your neck. You have a diffuser here along the bottom, and moving up now, underneath each one of these scoops, we have 2 vents, and then on the top, we have 1 vent. So I'm going to pull one of these guys off, and I'm going to show you how easily they break away, and they're meant to break away. By doing this, you see this red tab, and there's an open and close here. Pull this guy down, and that comes right off. So you notice, and this is translucent, that goes with the design of this helmet. This is actually called the Grotesque. It's a team from the UK. But what you're going to see is this piece pops right off, and then you have 2 settings. You have open, half open, and all the way open. And notice there's 2 holes. And these are going to have a vacuum behind them, and they're going to suck that hot, warm, moist, sweat-filled air away from your head, keeping you cool. And to put this guy back on, it's actually really easy. You just kind of line it up and pop it. And there you go. Most people don't know that they actually are that easy to take on and off. As I spin this guy back around, I want to show the profile at the bottom. Again, we talked about intermediate oval shape, and we talked about it being much more round across the front. Let's move into the guts a little bit here. This helmet was actually the first helmet to use the Arai emergency cheek pad system that everyone has kind of copied since then. But what it does is you're going to have these cheek pads. The cheek pads come out, and they have an emergency pull inside their. This is a brand new helmet, so we left them in. But these pulls will come down when you're riding, and they'll stick out the bottom here. And an EMT can easily, with one pull, remove the cheek pads. That way they can slide the helmet off the top of your head in a situation that you might be unconscious without moving your neck. It's a dry, cool liner. It's wicking. It's antimicrobial. It's removable. Really easy to wash. Just run it off underwater and let it sit out and air dry, and you'll be good to go. Pull out both these guys. Also, you have to think at a pro-level helmet, you're going to have a helmet that's going to need to be very technical and very functional. So you're going to want to be able to pull the liner out and give it a good wash. So as I mentioned, it's Snell 2010. The liner comes out. They put the connectors away from areas that will be pressure points. So it's 4 snaps. There you go. And here's your dry, cool liner. So there's your Arai liner. Notice the amount of ventilation across the top. Plenty of surface area cut out so that it's going to vent directly to your head. Antimicrobial, it's wicking, it's porous, it's going to suck that sweat right away from your head, easily washable. And you can see the inside of this guy as well. You can see all the different 10 millimeter vent holes that you're going to notice all the way back, built into the EPS to create that great channel of air. Most people don't realize this. If you're watching this, if you're seriously considering this helmet, then you're a serious dirt rider. But for motocross or supercross, a lot of lay people don't understand how active of riding conditions it is, how much you're sweating, how aerobic that exercise is. So this guy is really built to keep you as best cool as you possibly can. So as I mentioned, this helmet is going to be a pro-level helmet. It's going to start in the high 4 range for the solids and go a little bit higher than that in the graphics. A lot of technicality here. It's one of the most technical pieces. A lot of functionality that Arai built themselves that was then copied by competitors. This is the 3rd version, the VX Pro 3, Snell 2010, 3 pounds, 4 ounces. So reasonably lightweight. This is a large that we measured here today. If you have any questions about it, shoot us a line. See us at RevZilla.com or 877-792-9455. As always, it's over $39. It ships for free. If you get the wrong size, send it back to us. We'll exchange it for free. Never a restock fee here at RevZilla, so if you just don't like it, send it back in brand new condition. We'll exchange it for free. And as always, you can earn TeamZilla cash to be applied to your next order by shopping through us. It's our way of saving you in the long run. So again, this is the Arai VX Pro 3, available at RevZilla.com/Arai-helmets. I'm Anthony. We'll see you next time on RevZilla TV.